Most of you fail, not because the law doesn't work, not because you're not worthy, not because you're doing something wrong technically, but because you're whispering to the wrong God. You're praying to a deity outside yourself. You're speaking to a God in the heavens. You're directing your words, your pleas, your desperate petitions to some distant being who sits on a throne beyond the stars, who judges your worthiness, who weighs your prayers against some cosmic scale of merit. You're talking to a God who is separate from you, who is other than you, who must be convinced to grant your requests. And every time you pray this way, every time you beg this external God for what you want, you are confirming the very separation that keeps you powerless. You are affirming that the creative power is out there, not in here. You are declaring that someone else holds the keys to your destiny. You are making yourself small, insignificant, dependent, powerless. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter this illusion completely. The God you've been praying to, the one you've been waiting to hear from, the one you've been hoping will finally notice you and grant your desires, that God doesn't exist. Not in the way you think, not as some external being separate from you. The true God, the only God, the God who actually creates your reality, is inside you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally, actually, truly. The creative power that is bringing forth your world moment by moment, that is shaping every circumstance of your life, that is orchestrating every event you experience, is listening to you right now, not from the heavens, from within you. It is your own consciousness, it is your own awareness, it is your own imagination, and this God within you is not deciding whether or not to answer your prayers. This God is answering you constantly, automatically, perfectly, by creating your world in the exact image of your inner speech, your inner assumptions, your inner convictions about who you are and what is possible for you. When I finally understood this truth, when it penetrated not just my intellect but my very being, when I stopped begging and started commanding, when I ceased pleading with an external God and began claiming my power as the God within, I watched $1 million enter my life in 30 days. Not through some miraculous intervention from above, not because the universe finally decided I deserved it, not because I had accumulated enough good karma or said enough prayers or pleased some distant deity, but because I finally knew who I was. I knew that I am the creative power. I knew that my consciousness is God. I knew that my assumptions about myself must, by the very nature of consciousness itself, materialize in my outer world. And once I knew this, truly knew it, not as a concept but as a living reality, manifestation ceased to be a mystery. It became as certain as the law of gravity, as reliable as the rising sun, as inevitable as the harvest that follows the planting of a seed. Let me be absolutely clear with you from the very beginning, because I want no confusion about what I'm about to share with you. This is not a story about luck. This is not a tale about being in the right place at the right time. This is not an account of circumstances miraculously aligning in my favor through some cosmic accident. This is not about positive thinking or wishful hoping or fingers crossed optimism. This is a revelation, a disclosure, an unveiling of the one law that governs all of creation, the fundamental principle upon which the entire universe operates, the law that you have been using unconsciously, blindly, automatically, every single day of your life, every single hour, every single moment, creating both your greatest triumphs and your deepest failures, manifesting both your highest joys and your darkest sorrows, bringing forth both the circumstances you desire and the circumstances you dread. This is the law of assumption, the law that states, with absolute certainty and without exception, that whatever you assume to be true in consciousness must, by its very nature, by the immutable mechanics of reality itself, harden into fact in your outer world. Whatever you are conscious of being, you must become in manifestation. Whatever state you occupy in imagination, you must experience in circumstance. Whatever feeling you sustain in the secret chamber of your mind, you must encounter in the physical world. This is not belief. This is not faith in the religious sense. This is not some mystical hope that maybe, possibly, if you're lucky, things might work out. This is law, as certain as mathematics, as reliable as physics, as absolute as the fact that water freezes at 32 degrees, or that 2 plus 2 equals 4. You see, most of you have been taught that God is somewhere out there, in the heavens, beyond the stars, sitting on a throne, judging your worthiness, deciding whether or not to grant your prayers. And so you beg, you plead, you negotiate, you make promises. You tell this distant God all the reasons why you deserve what you want, why you need it, why you'll be a better person if only you could have it. And then you wait for a sign, you wait for a miracle. You wait for the universe to decide that you've suffered enough, that you've proven yourself worthy, that your time has finally come. But I'm here to tell you something that will shatter everything you thought you knew about prayer, about manifestation, about the very nature of God itself. The God you've been praying to, the one you've been waiting to hear from, is not out there at all. God is in you. God is you. Your awareness, your consciousness, your imagination, this is God. And God is not some distant being who may or may not answer your prayers. God is the creative power that is answering you right now, in this very moment, by creating your world in the exact image of your inner speech, your inner assumptions, your inner convictions about who you are and what is possible for you. Let me take you back to 30 days before $1 million appeared in my life. I was not broke, I was not desperate, but I was curious. I had spent years teaching this law, watching others prove it true, seeing reality bend and reshape itself according to the assumptions people held in consciousness. And yet, I wanted to test it in a way that would leave no room for doubt, no room for skepticism, no room for anyone to say it was coincidence or timing or anything other than the law itself at work. So I chose a specific amount, $1 million, not because I needed it, but because it was large enough, specific enough, dramatic enough to prove beyond any shadow of doubt that consciousness truly is the only reality. I gave myself 30 days. I made no new business plans. I reached out to no one. I did not strategize or hustle or scheme. I simply went within. I closed the door to my senses. I shut out the world of appearances, and I began to whisper a sentence to myself. A sentence so simple that your rational mind will want to dismiss it. A sentence so powerful that when sustained with feeling, it has the capacity to rearrange the entire structure of your outer world. That sentence was this: thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. Not I will be wealthy. Not I hope to be wealthy. Not I'm trying to become wealthy. I am wealthy. Present tense, as if it were already true, as though the $1 million had already come. As though I were already the man who never worried about money, because money flowed to him effortlessly, endlessly, abundantly. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that sounds too simple. You're thinking there must be more to it than that. You're thinking, surely there were actions I took, strategies I employed, connections I leveraged. But I'm telling you, the only action I took was the action of assumption. I assumed I was wealthy. I persisted in that assumption. And the outer world, being nothing more than a mirror of my inner state, had no choice but to reflect that assumption back to me in the form of $1 million entering my life. But let me tell you why this works. And more importantly, let me tell you why it doesn't work for most of you. You see, when you say the words, I am wealthy, you are not simply mouthing an affirmation. You are not reciting a mantra. You are making a declaration of identity. You are stating who you are in this present moment. And the moment you say, I am, you invoke the name of God. I am is the name of God. It is the self-definition of the absolute. It is the foundation upon which all creation rests. When Moses asked God what his name was, God said, I am that I am, not I was, not I will be. I am, present tense, eternal presence. The ever-present awareness that is the source and substance of all that exists. So when you say, I am wealthy, you are not asking God to make you wealthy. You are declaring that you, as God, are already wealthy. You are claiming your wealth in consciousness. You are assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and assumption, when persisted in, must harden into fact. This is not belief, this is law. It is as certain as the law of gravity. It is as reliable as the rising of the sun. If you persist in an assumption, if you sustain the feeling of it, if you live in it until it becomes natural to you, it must, by the very nature of consciousness itself, manifest in your outer world. But here's where most of you fail. You say the words, but you don't believe them. You affirm, I am wealthy, while inside you're thinking, but my bank account says I'm broke. You declare, I am abundant, while inside you're feeling the lack, the fear, the worry. And so you're not really assuming wealth at all. You're assuming poverty. Because assumption is not about the words you speak. It's about the state you occupy. It's about the consciousness you embody. It's about who you are being in the secret chamber of your own imagination. Let me explain this to you in a way that might help you understand. Imagine for a moment that your life is a mirror. Everything you see in your outer world, every circumstance, every condition, every person, every event, is a reflection of your inner world. The mirror doesn't create the image. It simply reflects what is placed before it. So if you stand before the mirror with a frown on your face and you demand that the mirror smile, what happens? Nothing. The mirror cannot smile until you smile. The mirror cannot change until you change. And yet, this is what most of you do every single day. You look at your bank account and you demand that it reflect abundance. You look at your relationships and you demand that they reflect love. You look at your circumstances and you demand that they reflect success, but you are still wearing the face of lack, the face of fear, the face of limitation. And so the mirror, faithful and obedient as it is, continues to reflect back to you the very thing you do not want. The secret then is to turn away from the mirror. Stop trying to change the reflection. Instead, change your face. Change who you are being in consciousness. Assume the feeling of wealth. Not tomorrow, not when the money comes. Now, right now, in this very moment. Feel what it would feel like if you already had the $1 million. Feel the relief. Feel the freedom. Feel the quiet confidence of a man who never worries about money because money is always flowing to him. Embody that state. Live in that state. Persist in that state until it becomes more real to you than the evidence of your senses. And when you do, the mirror will have no choice but to reflect that new face back to you. This is what I did for 30 days. Every morning, before I opened my eyes, before I engaged with the world of appearances, I would whisper to myself, thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. And I would feel it. I wouldn't just say the words, I would sink into the feeling of them. I would let them saturate my consciousness. I would imagine what it felt like to be the man who already had the $1 million. Not the man hoping for it. Not the man trying to get it. The man who already possessed it. And I would carry that feeling with me throughout the day. I would return to it again and again. Whenever doubt crept in, whenever my rational mind screamed at me that I was delusional, that I was ignoring reality, I would gently turn away from those thoughts and return to my assumption. Thank God I am wealthy beyond measure. I am. Not I will be, I am. And here's what happened. At first, nothing. The outer world looked exactly the same. My bank account hadn't changed. No checks arrived in the mail. No unexpected windfalls appeared. And my rational mind said, see, this doesn't work. You're wasting your time. But I persisted because I understood something that most of you do not yet understand. The outer world is a delayed mirror. It doesn't reflect your current thoughts. It reflects your sustained assumptions. There is always a gap between the assumption and its manifestation. That gap is called the bridge of incidents. It is the series of events, the chain of circumstances, the unfolding of conditions that must occur in order for your assumption to materialize in the physical world. During this gap, you will be tested. Your faith will be challenged. The outer world will continue to show you the old reality, the reality that corresponds to your former assumptions. And you will be tempted to give up, to say it's not working, to return to your old state of consciousness. But this is precisely the moment when you must persist. This is the moment when your assumption is working beneath the surface, invisible to the outer eye, but active and powerful nonetheless. The seed has been planted. It is growing in the dark. It is sending down roots, drawing nourishment from the soil of consciousness, preparing to break through the surface and manifest in the light of day. By the 7th day of my experiment, something shifted. It wasn't a dramatic shift. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was subtle. I noticed that the feeling of wealth was beginning to feel natural to me. I wasn't forcing it anymore. I wasn't trying to convince myself. It had become my dominant state. When I thought about money, I no longer felt anxiety. I felt peace. I felt certainty. I felt as though the $1 million was already mine, as though it had always been mine, as though it was simply a matter of time before the outer world caught up to the inner reality I had created. By the 14th day, I began to notice changes in my inner speech. Inner speech is the silent conversation you have with yourself all day long. It is the stream of thoughts, the automatic sentences, the habitual patterns of thinking that run beneath the surface of your conscious awareness. And I realized that my inner speech had changed. Before, when I would think about money, my inner speech would say things like, I hope this works out. I need more income. I wonder when things will improve. But now, my inner speech was saying, money flows to me easily. I am wealthy. I always have more than enough. It was no longer a conscious effort. It had become automatic. And this is the key. This is the moment when you know your assumption has taken root. When the feeling of the wish fulfilled becomes so natural to you that you think from it instead of thinking of it. By the 21st day, the outer world began to shift. An old business contact, someone I hadn't heard from in over a year, reached out to me completely unsolicited. He said he'd been thinking about me, that he had a partnership opportunity he wanted to discuss. We met. He offered me a contract worth $400,000 up front, no negotiation. No hesitation. It was as though the entire situation had been orchestrated by an unseen hand, arranging itself perfectly to deliver to me exactly what I had assumed in consciousness. But that wasn't all. Over the next 9 days, a series of events unfolded that I could never have predicted, never have planned, never have orchestrated through my own efforts. An investment I had made years ago, one I had forgotten about, matured and paid out unexpectedly. A client I had worked with in the past referred 3 new clients to me, all of whom signed contracts immediately. A business venture I had considered dead suddenly came back to life, bringing with it an influx of revenue I hadn't anticipated. And on the 30th day, when I sat down and calculated everything that had come into my life, it totaled exactly $1 million. Now, I want you to understand something. This was not magic. This was not luck. This was not the universe rewarding me for being a good person, or working hard, or having the right connections. This was law. The law of assumption. The law that states that whatever you assume to be true in consciousness must, by its very nature, manifest in your outer world. I assumed I was wealthy. I persisted in that assumption. And the outer world rearranged itself to match that assumption. It had no choice, because consciousness is the only reality. The outer world is not the cause of your experiences. It is the effect. The cause is always within you, in the assumptions you hold, in the states you occupy, in the feeling you embody in the secret chamber of your imagination. Now, let me address something that I know is on your mind. You're wondering, if it's this simple, why doesn't everyone do it? Why are people still struggling, still broke, still trapped in circumstances they don't want? And the answer is this: because they don't understand the nature of assumption. They think assumption means pretending. They think it means ignoring reality. They think it means lying to themselves. But assumption is not pretense. Assumption is a claim of identity. It is a declaration of who you are in this present moment. And most people cannot make that declaration because they are so identified with their current circumstances, so fused with the evidence of their senses, that they cannot conceive of themselves as anything other than what they appear to be. Let me give you an example. A man comes to me and says, "I want to be wealthy." And I say, "Then assume you are wealthy." And he says, "But I'm not wealthy. I'm broke. I have debts. I have bills. I can't pay my rent. How can I assume I'm wealthy when the evidence clearly shows I'm poor?" And this is the problem. He is judging after appearances. He is letting the outer world dictate his inner state. He is allowing the mirror to tell him what face to wear. But the law works in reverse. You must wear the face of wealth in consciousness first, and then the mirror will reflect that face back to you in the form of outer circumstances. So I tell him, the outer world is not the cause, it is the effect. Your poverty is not creating your assumption of poverty. Your assumption of poverty is creating your poverty. You are poor because you are conscious of being poor. You think thoughts of lack. You speak words of limitation. You feel the feeling of not having enough. And consciousness, being the only reality, must objectify that inner state in the form of an outer world that matches it. So if you want to change your outer world, you must first change your inner world. You must stop assuming you are poor and start assuming you are rich. Not when the money comes, now, right now. In the face of all evidence to the contrary, you must claim your wealth in consciousness before you see it in your bank account. And he says, "But that's so hard. How can I feel wealthy when I'm surrounded by poverty? How can I assume abundance when lack is staring me in the face?" And I say, this is the test. This is the crucible. This is where your faith is forged. Can you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled even when the outer world denies it? Can you persist in your assumption even when everything around you is screaming that you're wrong, that you're delusional, that you're ignoring reality? Because this is what separates those who manifest their desires from those who remain trapped in their circumstances. The ability to persist in the assumption of the wish fulfilled regardless of appearances. You see, most people give their power away to the outer world. They let circumstances dictate how they feel. They let other people's opinions determine what they believe about themselves. They let the evidence of their senses override the claims of their imagination, and so they remain slaves to their current reality, victims of their conditions, beggars waiting for life to give them what they want. But I'm telling you, you are not a beggar. You are a king. You are God in human form. You are the creative power that is authoring the story of your life. And the moment you realize this, the moment you accept this, the moment you begin to live from this truth, everything changes. Let me tell you about a man who came to me years ago. He was drowning in debt, $80,000 deep, creditors calling every day, his wife losing faith in him, his children looking at him with disappointment in their eyes. He asked me what he should do, and I told him something that made him angry. I said, "You must die." Not physically, but the man who is $80,000 in debt must die. You cannot drag him into wealth. You must bury him and resurrect a new man, a man who has never known debt, a man who, when he imagines his bank account, feels abundance, a man who walks differently, speaks differently, thinks differently, because in his inner world, the debt never existed. He resisted at first. He said, "But that's not realistic. The debt is real. The creditors are real. The stress is real. How can I pretend it doesn't exist?" And I said, "I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to assume. There's a difference. Pretending is denying what is. Assuming is claiming what you want to be. Pretending is running away from reality. Assuming is creating a new reality. When you assume you are debt-free, you are not ignoring the debt. You are transcending it. You are rising above it. You are claiming a higher state of consciousness, a state in which debt does not exist, a state in which you are financially free. And when you occupy that state, when you persist in it, when you make it your habitual dwelling place, the outer world must conform to it. So he went home, and every night, before he fell asleep, He would enter into his imagination. He would close his eyes and construct a scene that implied his debt was paid. He would imagine opening a letter from the bank that said, "Congratulations, your account has been settled." He would imagine his wife hugging him, tears of relief streaming down her face, saying, "We did it, we're free." He would imagine lying in bed at night with a deep sense of peace in his chest, the kind of peace that comes when you no longer carry the burden of financial worry. And he would loop that scene. He would play it over and over until it felt real, until it felt more real than the debt itself. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. The creditors kept calling, the bills kept coming, the stress kept mounting, and he was tempted to give up. He was tempted to say, "This is nonsense. This doesn't work. I'm wasting my time." But he persisted, because he understood that the outer world is a delayed mirror, and that the gap between assumption and manifestation is the testing ground where faith is proven. By the 3rd week, his inner speech began to change. He noticed that when he thought about money, he no longer felt panic. He felt calm. He felt certain. He felt as though the solution was already on its way, even though he couldn't see it yet. And this inner shift, this change in his dominant state of consciousness, was the turning point. Because consciousness is the only reality, and when your consciousness changes, your outer world must change to match it. On the 30th day, he received a phone call. It was from an uncle he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. The uncle said, "I had a dream about you. I saw you struggling, and I felt compelled to help. I'm leaving you an inheritance, $90,000, enough to clear your debt and start fresh." The man was stunned. He asked me, "Was that coincidence?" And I said, "There is no such thing as coincidence. There is only law. You assumed you were debt-free. You persisted in that assumption. And the outer world rearranged itself to deliver to you the means by which that assumption could be fulfilled. The uncle was simply the bridge, the instrument through which your assumption manifested." Now, some of you are thinking, "But I don't have a rich uncle. I don't have anyone who can give me money." And you're missing the point. The bridge of incidents is not something you can predict or control. You don't need to know how your desire will be fulfilled. You only need to know that it will be fulfilled. Because consciousness is the only cause. And when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the how takes care of itself. The outer world is infinitely resourceful. It has a million ways to deliver to you what you have claimed in consciousness. Your job is not to figure out the how. Your job is to persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled until the outer world catches up. Let me give you another example. A woman came to me and said she wanted to manifest a specific amount of money. She said, "I need $10,000 in 30 days. And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I need to pay my rent. I need to pay my bills. I need to survive." And I said, "There's your problem. You're manifesting from a state of need. And need is lack. Need is poverty. Need is the very consciousness that will keep you broke. Because consciousness is the only reality. And if you are conscious of needing money, you will continue to need money. The outer world will continue to reflect back to you the state of need." So I said to her, "Stop trying to get money. Instead, assume you already have it, not in the future, now. Feel what it would feel like if the $10,000 was already in your bank account. Feel the relief, feel the freedom, feel the ease." And she said, "But how can I feel relief when I'm about to be evicted? How can I feel free when I'm drowning in bills?" And I said, "This is the test. Can you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled even when the outer world denies it? Can you occupy the state of wealth even when surrounded